About a year ago, I got a log from my grandfather. Uh, it's been drying on our porch for quite a while, so it's time to make a bowl out of it. It's been previously cut in half, just on the bandsaw, pretty simple. Next, I'll be squaring up two edges of it, one edge just so I can square up the other and get a flat edge to drill in the drill press, as you will see later. Right now, I'm squaring up the first edge. It doesn't have to be super critical as long as it's a straight line. Um, and now the other side so that we can have two parallel faces to put on the drill press, uh, or somewhat parallel. Now I'm finding the center of the wood. When you do find the center of the wood, don't measure to the edges of the bark, measure to the edges of the wood. You'll understand what I'm talking about once you cut it up in the log. Um, then on top, underneath it is the circle cutting jig, which I will use to cut a rough circle out of. I usually make the circle just a little bit bigger, just so I don't have to waste a bunch of my bowl. I'm measuring the shortest side right now, and I'll find a nail hole that lines up with that. Right now, there's already a nail in there, close enough to the right size, a little bit bigger actually, so that won't hurt it. Um, and I'm about to hammer it in there. Uh, you can't really see it, but there is a nail in there, and that's what it will be pivoting on. If you ever need any tracks for simple jigs that aren't, you probably won't use very much, just use like a 3/4 inch piece of plywood. It tends to fit really good in the track, and you can rip it down to size and then just brad down to the piece of wood. I've had this for a few months, maybe even a year, and it hasn't stopped working any. I had to sand it down at one point, but it's done pretty good. Now I'm blowing off my table. Uh, this slide's good enough. Not super critical because we're just going to be turning on the lathe. And that person in the background, that's my dad. I'm cutting off the edges first, and then if you are cutting it to the approximate size already, or the exact size already, then you can actually turn the log on there. But I don't care too much for that. So next, I'm prying the blank off, and now I'm at the drill press. You see the wormwood screw right here. You want to find a bit that fits the threads pretty close, or actually fits the part inside of the threads, and the threads can be digging into the wood more by it. Drill it a little bit deeper than the wormwood screw. Set your depth stop, and then you'll drill where you had that nail in there earlier, and it will line it up in the exact center where you cut it for the nail. So it leaves all the guesswork out of the question. You can see the wobble in the drill bit, but it shouldn't matter. Next, I'm putting the Nova G3 chuck on the lathe. This chuck I've had for a few months. It works pretty good. Um, that's the thing to tighten it with, obviously. Put the wormwood screw in there, turn it on really slow, and then let it bite, and then you can hit the lock, tighten the rest by hand. It'll also help tighten the chuck, so it's really beneficial. Next, I'm just roughing the sides with the roughing gouge, and you can use a bowl gouge. I kind of switch between the two. The bowl gouge goes a little bit slower, but it works a little bit better for the more curved surfaces. Um, I think right now I'm using a bowl gouge for that side since it's just so rough. Um, you can still see the bark on the bottom, so I didn't flatten. Here you can see I'm working on the bottom of the bowl. I'm leaving enough room that I can put my tenon in on the bottom. If the bottom of your bowl happens to be a little bit too small, you can always make the bowl shallower and just turn it down some more. You don't want to leave the bark, the tree bark on there. If you're gonna leave any bark, leave the lighter brown colored bark. It tends to hold in better, especially after you finish it. Next, I'll be making my tenon with a parting tool. and a bowl gouge to take out the majority of the material, and a skew chisel to clean it up. You want to use a caliper, some tool to measure the width of your jaws, and then make sure you get the tenon the right size because it's a pain to mount it back on. Um, yeah, so the side of the jaws are angled in a little bit, and you want to try to match that as best you can. It's not super critical, but it helps. Uh, yeah. Now I'm ready to do the inside of the bowl. I'm using a bowl gouge to take out the majority of the material, the preferred tool for the job. The hole in the middle is just what the wormwood screw left, and it's pretty good for not leaving a point in the middle, as that can be difficult to remove sometimes. So that usually works out nicely. And if in case you're wondering what kind of chisels, they're PSI woodworking chisels. They they're pretty good. I built a sharpener for them recently, so they're amazing now. So uh, yeah, I'm using also a scraper to remove some of the material. It tends to be working pretty good. Whenever you're turning the bowl, you got to stop it every once in a while and make sure the walls aren't getting too thin, and make sure you have like some kind of depth measure to measure out the inside, so you don't run into your chuck and mess up your chisel. Uh, Whenever be careful about turning the inside of the bowl. The little lip around the top, it can have a nick in the side of it, and occasionally it can catch your arm and kind of mess it up a little bit. It's never too bad, but it's better not to. Never use a roughing gouge for the inside of your bowl like this. Is the point of it is not pointed enough, and you will end up running to the side and getting some pretty nasty catches. Bowl gouges might seem intimidating at first because of all the catches, but if you sharpen them good and you can grind off the little lip on them, the edge or whatever, and they won't quite catch quite as much, and it'll be a lot more enjoyable that way. I believe that this is a spindle gouge. Correct me if I'm wrong. Uh, Whenever you put your bowl in there, don't tighten it too tight because you can crack it. I've done it before. Next, I'll be sanding. I usually sand up to about 1,000 grit, but it's all up to you. 600 can usually give you a pretty nice finish. Um, again, be careful about the lip having a rough edge on it, and always, I mean, work your way up through the grits. Don't try to skip around just because the lathe is spinning so fast. It's pretty easy. This took me like a total of 20 minutes to sand, so it's not too horrible. Next, I'll be finishing it with Danish oil, and then we'll be done.